Hi, I'm Kat Kalashian for Live and Invest Overseas, and today I'm joined again by my friends Jeff and Joch, who are living in northern Portugal. Today, instead of focusing on budgetary concerns or practicalities, we're going to focus on a little bit more of the subjective, a little bit more of the ethereal aspect of the benefits of living overseas, which can seem a little kooky. You know, the term wellness sometimes gives people this idea of hippies with crystals or something, but wellness, peace of mind, just living a healthier and happier lifestyle is what I mean when I say wellness. And that's what we're talking about today with Jeff and Joch, because moving abroad isn't just about saving money. It's not just about the tax breaks that you can get, although it can be, that's a bonus. But it can also what it really does is it changes how you live day to day. And so Jeff and Joch, you guys moved from California to northern Portugal, as I mentioned. And how would you describe the biggest emotional or lifestyle change since leaving your home, your former home in California?
I would say the biggest change is being embraced by a group of people, new friends, a whole new community of people that just take their time in enjoying being engaged with you. It is an amazing difference here. This approach to living, the approach that children are to be seen and heard and be with you wherever you go. There's this wonderful, rich feeling of family, and to be embraced by that, by total strangers who end up becoming your friends, is a marvelous experience.
A good example of that would be lunchtime. Here, lunch can be anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
Even businesses close for lunch for that time. And there really is that attitude of lunch is sacrosanct. It's the time to rest, time to meet with friends, time to basically chill out, and then you go back to work. But nothing really is set on a set schedule. This is not like a precision switch watch here. Things always run late on their own time schedule,
And
and
Jeff,
you learn to kind of live with that.
and Jeff's point about the business closing for lunch, a little sign will be put in the door, handwritten, saying we're all at lunch, because it's not having certain employees covered for somebody else. It's all of the employees get to go have lunch either together or go elsewhere with their other friends. But it's all about, this is important. It's lifestyle. Everything is all
It's
about.
protected in the culture, right?
It is.
It's not an option. Yeah, no, that's exactly how it is here in Paris as well. Okay, so before the move, was there any element of stress that kind of contributed to the impetus to move, your motivation to move? I know, Jeff, you've mentioned in the past how you were spending a lot of time in transit to and from work, which can't be the nicest way to spend, several hours of your day. And Joch, I know you were getting ready for retirement and concerned about your pension versus employment income. So were those stressors or any other stressors kind of factors in the motivation?
Yes, they were, because basically I worked in a really stressful job working for the state of California, and we were talking about, could we live without me working? Could we live with Jock retiring? And if we had stayed in California, I would have had to continue to work, which, beside the commute, which was already stressful, the job, which was also stressful.
Well, for me, the thought of retiring at age 70 and then being retired, but my husband was still working full time for the next 15 to 20 years. The thought of me turning 90 when he could finally start enjoying things with him as
That's crazy.
retirees together just didn't make a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah.
Numbers didn't add up.
And so it was sort of like well, let's figure out a different way. How can we downsize? So the very first thing we did was we stopped using two cars and we just used one and got rid of one of our cars.
And I think you mentioned earlier, Kat, one of the things for me personally was the safety issue. I just didn't feel safe anymore in the United States. Here, I feel safe. This is the seventh safest country in the world, according to the World Peace Index. I think the United States is like 131 or 132.
Yeah, it's way down in the hundreds.
I think it's even more so now.
Hmm.
So that was a huge thing for me as well, is I wanted to be able to feel safe in public spaces without always having to watch my shoulder or so for me that was a huge change here. I feel a real deep sense of peace and safety here in Portugal that I never really felt in the United States. And I feel like I belong here more than I ever did in the United States.
And as we say in Portugal, concordo. I agree.
Awesome. Thank you guys. So, how quickly, once you moved, did you notice any shift or, difference in your sense of peace or well-being? Was it kind of a land on the ground kind of thing, or was it like a month later when you realized, oh, hey, I haven't thought about that in a while?
Well, this part's kind of difficult for me to say, but I will say, I think, the first year was difficult because of the pandemic. We arrived right during that time. But one of the things that we noticed was how Portugal was very proactive. The government was very proactive about protecting the citizens. They had closed everything down except the pharmacies, essential services, and the grocery stores. And then, of course, they did things like practice, social distancing, wearing masks, using hand sanitizer until they found out that the COVID was an airborne pathogen. So that was a really amazing, even though they were much slower in getting the vaccines out. And by the way, the vaccines were free for us, whereas in the
Good
United
to know.
States, I think you had to pay. And so the numbers here and and eventually the amount of people immunized is like now in the 90 percentile. Whereas I don't even know what it is in the United States, but you had over 1 million people die in the United States
Mhm.
during that pandemic. As to here, it was only maybe a
Negligible.
couple thousand.
I, I I think the astronomical thing, and it started clicking in our heads when we started seeing things like people in complete hazmat suits were delivering food and medications to other people's homes. I mean,
Oh,
it was absolutely amazing. The first few days of arrival here, there was this constant information system set up and letting everybody in the country know this is what's going on and this is what we're doing in order to take good care of our elderly and our children. And everything was positioned that way. And it dawned on us as we navigated through COVID that was very reassuring to us.
Yeah, the government took this pandemic very seriously, and they did it very wisely. And I would say a majority of the people in this country took it seriously well
Okay.
too, and they followed instructions. Whereas in the United States, it was kind of like you're infringing on my freedoms. Why
right.
do I have to wear a mask? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to get a vaccine? And it was just we knew people that died because they were against anti-vaccinations or they didn't want to follow the protocols. Here, it was the complete opposite. So my sense of safety was the first thing I've noticed this year was like, wow, this country is definitely more serious about taking care of its citizens. They don't treat it like a joke. They don't treat it like, they consider it a human right and dignity here. And so I definitely felt that the first year I was here.
Mhm.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a really good testimonial for just how the government and the health network and the health national health system, how they treat people in general. Whether there's a pandemic or not, people matter. The citizenry matters.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I mean, we had private health insurance and we had our prescriptions rewritten by the private health insurance doctors. The person at the pharmacy, like the second month that we were there getting prescriptions refilled, said, "Now, what's the matter with you? Why haven't you registered with National Health? It should be less expensive. You
Yeah.
shouldn't be paying this much money." And just took us to task.
Well, we told them that, of course, because of the pandemic, our first two appointments
We hadn't been
with
able to
with
register with National
immigration
Health yet.
were postponed, and you really can't register with National Health until you do get your residence.
But she kept checking with us every month. Have you
No,
registered
that's
with
fine.
National Health yet? And
I've had
did you get
doctors do that to
did
me
you
as well.
did you get your residence card? Yeah.
Exactly. She's
It
like,
was that
why do you still not have the carte vitale, the national health card? Like, how come you still don't have it? How come you're still using insurance? Why are you still paying out of pocket? All right, so let's switch gears a little bit into just how your day-to-day lives have changed and how that has also helped with just a general better quality of life. So take us through a typical day. What does your average day living in northern Portugal look like?
Well, I need 2 hours where I don't have to talk in the morning. And it's very easy to do over one coffee and have a couple of bolachas de Maria, which are like a little biscuit. They're not very, they don't have a lot of sweet in them, but it's a little biscuit, a bolacha de Maria. And I mean, I never did that in the United States. I had to talk, I had to be traveling, I had to be working. Eh, never got into that kind of a, and he lets me do it.
And I let him splurge on his CNN and Netflix streaming. For me, a typical day usually starts around 7:38. I go to a hydrogymnastics class, so I go to the local gym, usually around
The municipal pool.
yeah. There's a
Nice.
municipal pool about a kilometer away from us that I go to 3 times a week to do either swim lessons,
Swimming.
swimming and or hydrogymnastic class. So hydro aerobics, hydrogymnastics, and that's really great. And then usually I get home, I do my chores, and then I get working on anything that needs to be done. And then it's nice to make lunch and take a nice nap.
Yep. I love the siesta culture.
Yes. And then I get up and then errands I have to run, I run them. And then usually it's dinner time. And then we just usually after dinner, we'll either watch Netflix
Read a book
or go out
do a
to
movie.
dinner if we go out to have dinner or go watch a performance, like maybe a symphony or something like that.
Wow.
Go visit friends, stuff like that.
Yep.
Sounds like the dream life to me.
This
Yeah,
Saturday,
it's pleasant.
this Saturday, we've got a concert to go to at Casa de Musica, which is featuring flautists, and we know one of the flautists that will be performing, and so 10 o'clock morning concert that we'll be going
Oh,
to.
fun. Oh, I love a morning concert.
Yeah.
Now that I have kids, I never want to do anything at night.
Yes. Yes.
So, how has the pace of life affected your stress levels? We've talked so much, here and elsewhere about how the pace of life changes. And I think the mañana attitude, it's so associated with Latin America, south of the border in the US. But that is absolutely a truism of Europe as well, in my experience. So, how has that affected you guys?
Well, I have to admit, we've adopted it a little bit ourselves. I mean, the biggest stress we have is trying to decide, do we want to cook our own lunch today, or do we want to go across the street for a prato de dia at the local cafe, that kind of thing. And we go through the same kind of conversation about dinner as well, because they're almost an equal trade-off. Cooking at home or eating at a restaurant are about the same expense.
Hmm.
And it's amazing how inexpensive restaurants can be.
And I think for me, it took me a couple of years to really downshift my speed because I was moving at California speed, fast and furious like the first 2 years I was here. And I find it a challenge sometimes when I still think, oh, I want to get my whole list of things done. And it's like, no, 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 no. Get a couple of the important things done and the rest can be done tomorrow.
Yeah.
Mañana.
So
Mañana.
it has
What is
something-
the word for tomorrow in Portugal?
Amanhã.
Amanhã.
Amanhã. Okay, so
Amanhã.
the amanhã lifestyle.
Yes.
I love that.
A little later. I'll see you later.
Exactly. Well, here in France, they also have this thing called the petit quart d'heure. If something is going to be a little bit late, they call it just a little 15 minute, and it's like an idiom, the little 15 minutes. It's all going to be fine in just a little 15 minutes. He'll be here in just a little 15 minutes, and in America they might say he'll be here in just a minute. It'll be 5 max, the 15 minutes, that's the smallest amount he'll be,
Oh, we figured out why everything starts late in Portugal. It's because goodbyes take so long. So if
Sure
somebody's
do, yeah.
coming to you, they're coming from somewhere, so they're saying goodbye to somebody, and that's what takes so long. It's longer than a Minnesota goodbye. And I can say that honestly, I grew up in Minnesota.
And of course, when you run into someone, that of course they want to talk to you and say hello
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah,
hear
that'll be a
their
whole
story.
10-minute detour out of your day.
Oh,
But it's so necessary, and it's also part of the pleasure and the joy of the life. But there have been days when my gardienne, who is Portuguese, she's like the caretaker of our building, and she's Portuguese, and I love chatting with her, but sometimes it makes me 5-10 minutes late for whatever I was on my way out the door to do.
Right.
yep.
Correct.
Okay, so one of the other things I want to ask about, and I know you guys do have a car now, but you spent many years living without a car. And so, how have lifestyle changes like not having a car and having to walk more or figuring out public transportation, all of these things that kind of equate to living more, spending more time outdoors, and also the fact of living near the ocean, which I guess you did before as well. But how does all of that factor into your overall lifestyle and well-being?
Well, I have to admit, just because we have a car doesn't mean that we use the car all the time. We use public transportation as well. I mean, we'll use it to go into Porto because why
Driving in the city.
drive into the city and deal
And
with
pay for parking.
paying for parking when you can use public transportation in and out. So it's not that we exclusively use a car just because we have a car. And that is a different mindset for us. It really is. We never would have been thinking that way back in the States. We
Yeah.
just would. And that's a relaxing kind of ease of mind. Part of the, if it takes 45 minutes to an hour to get into the city instead of 20 minutes, it's not a problem. It's part of the
Right.
day. It's part of the experience.
Yeah.
We look at things as being experiences now, not as, every
Because every day is a
is-
spontaneous day where anything can happen, and you just kind of have to
we relax to it.
be prepared for the unexpected. Like you said, oftentimes you'll run into people that and they want to talk, and that might delay you from kind of the timeline that's going on in your head going, and you just kind of have to roll with it and accept and say, you know what, this connection is more important than being a little late for a meeting or
Yeah.
or being a little delayed going to go grocery shopping or to the pharmacy or run other errands.
We've learned that our priorities really changed. They absolutely have changed.
Yeah.
Certain things doesn't have as much rigid weight and sense of importance. Our life is not more important than, well, actually, our life is more important than a to-do list.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's such a good advice. All right. What about food? So we have talked about shopping in the markets versus supermarkets in the past, but in general, has your food culture personally as a family, has it changed, in terms of what you cook at home, what you expect on a menu when you go out, and how has that affected your health and well-being?
Well, the food is much healthier here because it has less chemicals.
And we
They
don't
don't have the GMOs that you'll find in a lot of the food in the United States. Plus, the quality of food has to be much higher, better. Like Coke here has real sugar in it, not chemical sugar or corn syrup or any of that stuff. That stuff just doesn't fly here in Europe.
we had to work so much harder to have a healthy lifestyle and eating well in California even
Mm-hmm.
than we do here. Here, it's a piece of cake, it's easy, and we don't have to worry about it as much. So it's wonderful. 6 years later, we're much more chemical free.
Mhm.
And we had to work hard to be that in California.
And it's
Mm.
interesting. You do develop a taste for the local cuisine.
Oh.
I eat lots more fruits and vegetables. Well, more vegetables. I do eat a lot of fruits as well. I wasn't a big seafood person, but living so close to the coast, I'm eating seafood, and it's actually really good seafood as opposed to the stuff that we were eating back in
And
the
we've
States.
discovered barnacles, and it's
Yeah,
just,
there's all these new cuisines. Yeah.
it's just wonderful.
They're called presebish here, but they're basically like gooseneck barnacles, and they're a delicacy here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh, that's great. Well, and one of the other big major aspects of well-being, mental and actually physical, it's been proven, is your social life, your integration with community, the fact that you're married, the fact that you have a pet, all of these relationships in life we now know do factor into one's quality of life, their life expectancy, the health problems they go through, the cortisol levels, the stress levels that they have every day. And so obviously you guys moved as a married couple, which already takes out a little bit of that loneliness. But in fact, I have actually found it living as a couple, it's harder to get integrated into local communities than it is as a single person, because a single person kind of has no choice, right? If you're married, you can just sit at home and watch Netflix, and that's a great night. If you're single, you don't have that option. So you go out and you create a community. So how has your social life evolved since you've landed?
Well, that was one of the big question marks that we had. And would it work? Because we were leaving everything behind in the United States, and we had
All our family and friends.
we had no family, no friends, nobody over here. And so it really felt like we were taking the gigantic leap. And that 12-hour flight from San Francisco to Lisbon really reinforced it. I got more and more anxious as I was flying over. What have we done? But when we got off of the plane and we were met by GNR because the country was closing down, and these people were so friendly, so nice, trying to make sure that we had transportation set up, that we had a place to live, that the airport was closing, and they wanted to make sure that we knew that we had to be safe and how to be taking care of ourselves and not to congregate in big groups and things like that. It was amazing. That was the first introduction to, these people really care about you, even if you're a stranger from the United States.
It's true. If a stranger falls, it's not unusual for a lot of people to come up to you and say, "Hey, are you okay?" Even if it's in Portuguese. Whereas maybe in the United States, you'd be ignored, maybe, unless you were bleeding out, or
Yeah.
Or somebody wants to sue you for falling down on their property or
Right.
whatever it is.
Yes.
People really care. Everybody cares. One of my
We go.
whimsy things was to wear a T-shirt inside out. I'll wear it so I get 2 days out of it. One side out, and then turn it inside out and wear it the next day. And that was it was sort of my summer thing, and I got into that habit in college, and I've been doing it ever since. Well, I was on a bus wearing my T-shirt inside out, and this little old lady tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Excuse me," in Portuguese, "Excuse me, do you know that your shirt is inside out?" And I said, "Oh, thank you." And she was going to make sure that I knew that my shirt was inside out, and
That's cute.
and it was just adorable. And
Yeah.
afterwards, I went, "How nice of her to take such good care of me."
Right, exactly.
And if I go to the cafe across the street or the pharmacy and by myself, and Jock's not with me, they'll always ask, "How's Jock? How's he doing?"
Yep.
Oh, give him hugs from us and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Jeff always comes home and says, "Sophia sent you hugs."
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
The chef's wife sent you hugs. Our neighbor we just ran into sent you hugs. The
That's-
pharmacist were asking about you.
Yep. And same thing. If I show up someplace without him, it's the same. Oh, how's Jeffinho? He's
Jeffinho.
Jeffinho.
They like to
That's
use
cute.
communicators with me, so they find me precious. It's kind of cute.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, so many people worry about loneliness when they're moving abroad. Many because they're single, but also couples. And I imagine anybody, whether you're a family, I came here and got pregnant immediately, and I felt crazy, lost and alone, even though I had never been with more people in my living situation at that time. But obviously your experience has been the opposite of lonely. It has been filled with people, even during the pandemic, even during the lockdowns. You have been touched by the local people.
The condominium that we live in it took 2 years to be built. And during that 2 years, we came and visited just about every month, checking on the construction, checking on the supply chain. Were supplies coming in again now that the COVID lockdowns were done and that kind of thing. And on the day that we moved in, we put all of the boxes on the patio out here so that it would be fast and easy, and furniture inside to unpack. As soon as the movers left, this fellow across the street, his name is
The house behind us.
His name is Joaquin. But we'd been waving at him for 2 years, but never met him, never talked to him, never anything. He walks across on a hot August afternoon with a couple of cold glasses
of Muscatel.
of Muscatel,
Oh my gosh.
saying,
Welcome.
oh, Jacques, oh, Jeff, he knew our names. He'd asked somebody what our names were. Me nome is Joachim, and welcome to the neighborhood. Gave us the 2 glasses of Moscatel and went back across the street, and he was welcoming us to the neighborhood. About an hour later, he comes back and we're unpacking boxes, and he says, "Can I have my glasses back?"
Yes.
And it was welcome to the neighborhood.
And since then we've gotten to know his family, both of his granddaughter and grandson tutored me for a little while. And so they've been really the neighbors here have been wonderful.
It's just you're welcomed in. It's just
And the cafe culture really helps to get you integrated. Europe, I think is that cafe culture. So if you are feeling lonely, go to a local cafe.
Yeah.
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 And say hi to
I
someone.
would say more than that, go every day at the same time or a few times a day, and you will start to notice the same people. If you go at 7 or 8 a.m., it'll be the people getting a little to-go espresso walking out the door in their construction outfit. If you come back every day at 6 or 7 p.m., it'll be the family, or let's say 3 or 4, it'll be the family getting goûter or whatever it is. I don't know what you call it there, but the little snack for the kids after school. And I know it has a name there because I wrote it in my book, but I can't remember it right now. Lunche, yeah. And then, right, if you're there around dinner time, you'll see probably on the same day of the week, the same elderly couple or the same person, same businessman comes in and comes at the same time. And as much as you're noticing the clientele, the staff is noticing you, and you become one of their regulars. And Harry and I, my husband and I, were just talking about this recently about becoming a regular here in France. And even if you're a foreigner, it doesn't prohibit you from being a regular. You know what I mean? You can be a foreigner and still accepted as part of the community, as part of the neighborhood, as a patch in the quilt kind of thing. So I absolutely agree. Whether you're in Greece and it's a taverna, in France, the cafe, Portugal, the cafe, Spain, I would say cafe, but more tapas bar, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, just find where the locals go and start to just make an appearance. You don't really have to put effort in. At least give it a month of showing up, and then put some effort in if you feel comfortable. But at this point, I have a regular cafe. I know every person that works in that cafe, and they all know me. And it takes years of regular visits to become that. But the feeling of becoming that, walking past the cafe, not going in, just walking past, and the guy seeing you and giving you a nod or a wave, it really is a huge feeling of accomplishment and integration.
Yep.
And that's how we made friends here in our new neighborhood in Parafitas.
Yeah.
I just decided one day to go into the local cafe, and I made friends that way, and they've grown, relationships have developed. If you're open to it, open to the experiences, and
invariably it's either the owner or the waiter that is gonna let everybody else in the cafe who's experiencing the cafe say, that new guy, his name is Jeff, he's from America. Immediately the story starts going around. You don't even have to tell people half the time.
Right.
And all of a sudden people are, oh, hola Jeff, hola Jacques.
Yeah. Everybody starts to recognize you. And that is a really important point to make. No matter where you're living in Europe, it's hard to describe, but every little neighborhood can feel like its own isolated village, its own little community. So I live here in Paris, in the heart of the most metropolitan city in Europe. And within a few blocks radius, it feels like a tiny little village, and I think even if you're living in a tiny little village, you can kind of export that feeling to any city or larger town. And as you guys are saying, where you're living isn't necessarily a little village, but you're able to find your nook.
And it's very reassuring to me. And it's what I was so concerned about, not having been in Portugal from 1979 until 2019 for the first time back. I was so concerned that might have been lost. Because what struck me so much in 79 was that it reminded me of my little town living back in northern Minnesota, a town of 5,000 people in the 50s, where everybody knew, every neighbor knew every kid. Every neighbor was like your aunt or uncle. Kids were all playing together. Everybody was in charge. And it was this sense of community. But the community that I was in was a bunch of people from Italy, a bunch of people from Norway, a bunch of people from Sweden, a bunch of people from all over Europe. And they were first generation. And so they really approached that sense of community and sense of family the same way.
And you're right, Kat. Even though this is basically a suburban village, it is a village here too.
Yes.
But it's a suburban area of Porto, Matosinhos. You're right. It just feels like, oh, except during the busy summer season when we're not being swamped by thousands of people, it's very calm and peaceful and quiet here, like a village.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's even a stronger statement to say it about a suburb versus a city, because you are a little bit more spread out in a suburb. In a city, I literally have like 100 meters in any direction, and anybody will know me in that direction. But you guys probably have to go a few hundred meters to get to your local cafe or whatever it is. And no, am I wrong?
No. We have to go, I mean, we can go right across the street or across the street that way, or a block up this way, or 3 blocks down that way. But when you're doing it,
meters of a couple cafes,
you might walk by somebody. When you're doing it, you might walk by somebody who you haven't seen in maybe 3 weeks, but they know you and they say hello to you and you say hello to them. And I mean, it's this sense that everybody is all part of the fabric. And that's really promotes wellness and stress-free lifestyle. It just does.
And the nice thing about Portugal is, unless you live way up high on a remote mountaintop or rural area, you're usually within 100 meters of a cafe.
Yeah.
Nice. I love that about Europe. I really do. All right, let's wrap things up here. Let's sum everything up. And how would you boil it down to say that moving abroad improved your overall well-being?
I certainly feel a lot safer, calmer. Joch says I'm a lot less anxious here. I'm not as ornery, difficult, I would say, stressed as I was living in the United States. So I guess that sums it up for me.
Yeah, gosh, it's amazing. The distance across the ocean just created a whole new stress-free lifestyle for us. And living in Europe it was like everything that made me feel old fell off, and everything that makes me feel young was wrapped around me. And
you're definitely enjoying your retirement.
We're happy campers.
And that loneliness we were afraid of, we still keep in touch with our friends and family back in the States, either by a web call or our family, like many folks on Joch's side of the family have come to visit us.
Yeah.
So
excellent. Yeah. And right. If you live in a nice new setting, you're going to be fielding visit requests for the first few years, I think, and probably the rest of your life. But
one of our nieces knows that she's going to get married in Portugal. She's picked the spot.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. That's just another hidden benefit, is that people want to come to you. You don't always have to go back to them. All right. So what would you say to somebody who is feeling burned out or overly stressed and wonders if a move overseas might help reset their life?
Try it. Do it. Don't question it. Try it. Do it. Book a ticket.
Yeah, but go on a vacation. Yes, we know you only get 2 weeks a year, as opposed to the folks here who get 20 to 30 days a year vacation. But yeah, take a vacation and check out a country, Portugal, or any country in Europe that you're interested in visiting, and see how it vibes with you.
Yeah, because you deserve it. Always remember that you deserve it.
Yeah, excellent.
You're worth it.
And don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
I love it. All right. Thank you guys so much for taking the time today, Jeff and Joch. And I will speak with you guys again soon, as always. And I will be seeing you in Portugal in about 2 weeks.
Our pleasure. Looking forward to it.